New Catholic Generation. I am Applesaida, the production manager for this channel, and I am here with Mark, the silent introvert.
Hi, everybody.
And we are here for the next episode of the Synod series that we're doing. Now, Mark here, I'm really excited because he's the first one addressing the formation of personality, which is really cool. And we have like specific lines from the pre-synod doc that is going to frame the entire video. So I'm going to start with those lines and then hand it over to Mark. The church oftentimes appears too severe and is often associated with excessive moralism. We need a church that is welcoming and merciful and which loves everyone, even those who are not following the perceived standards. Now, Mark, when we were prepping, we were really focused in on the aspect of ministering through the heart of the church and not being too severe. And basically, a person is a person and not a ministry. Now, you had a specific example of someone you personally knew that you wanted to bring into this. So can you explain your friend and kind of his story?
Right. Sure. A little bit of a backstory. I went to public school in high school, or growing up, and I actually ended up having a bunch of friends that were from all different faiths. I had a lot of atheist friends, some Baptist friends, and some Mormon friends. And so I grew up not really treating people any differently because of how their faith was, because they also extended the same kind of courtesy to me. And it was kind of a culture shock when going to college, because everyone was Catholic, and then it was rarely that someone else was a different faith, came from a different faith background. And so I had this friend named, for the sake of his privacy, we're going to call him Steve. And he was trying to figure out which faith he wanted to be. His immediate family was Mormon, but his extended family was Catholic. And so when he came to our college, he was trying to figure out which faith he wanted to be in. But unfortunately, because of how people treated him, he actually ended up leaving. Like, he was bullied so roughly that he actually ended up leaving halfway through his first semester.
Yeah, which that's something that we'll also talk about a little bit more later in the video. But when we come to the concept of seeing people as people and not as a ministry, like what are we trying to define here as like what ministry means versus people? So like when you look at, like, if I'm looking at you and I'm looking at you as a ministry, I'll approach you differently than if I'm looking at you as a person. So can you give examples of what we mean by that?
Yeah, they both come from a good place, I feel like, because no one goes into ministry being like, yeah, you're bad. They do come from a good place. They just come at it from the wrong angle. When you approach someone as a ministry, like, you approach them, and if you see someone in pain, you usually tell them, who's going through a lot of pain, you tell them to offer it up. Or in the case with Steve, everyone was just like, just convert already. Catholicism is the better religion, just convert. But when you see them as a person, you really get to start a conversation with them and try to figure out what they need through what they tell you, and figure out and meet them where they are at, which is, I think, very important.
Yeah, so you wanted to make this kind of our first how-to synod video, because a lot of them will discuss, you know, the ways the church is failing, and then we'll give like a little tidbit of how the church can do better. But this one, you want the entire video to be how the church can do better in this area of forming young Catholics who feel like they might be ministers. And we've come up with kind of 3 questions that that everyone can ask themselves when trying to minister to a person, and you would ask it every single time.
Yeah.
So I guess go ahead and take it away. What are the questions? And I guess give us an example through Steve.
All right. The first one would be trying to figure out what your intentions are during this ministry. Are you seeing them just as a ministry? Or are you seeing them as a person who needs to be ministered to? And with that in mind, there is something that is to be said about the fact that not everyone can be reached. Because sometimes they're in such a place in their life that they're either not ready to see, for lack of a better term, the light, or it's just they don't want to by choice. And we kind of have to be okay with that to a certain degree. And then the reversal of it is not everyone is called to minister to people, whether because sometimes they can't draw the line of seeing the ministry or the person, and that's also something that we have to be okay with. And in the case of Steve, everyone just saw him as someone who was Mormon because he was literally trying to see both sides of the faith, of the faith that he struggled with. He attended a Catholic college, he went to Catholic classes, and so he was getting that aspect of the faith, of his Catholic side. And then when it came to his Mormon side, he also was trying to figure out if that was the side for him. So he had Mormon missionaries come and talk to him. People only saw the Mormon side of him, which didn't allow for much growth when it came to starting a dialogue with him. The second question is, how do you exactly do the ministry? We've talked about there are 3 different ways you can minister to a person. It can be through action, it can be through dialogue, it could actually be through teaching, like actually telling this is what the catechism says and this is what church teaching is, because sometimes that is a necessary part in trying to minister to a person, because sometimes they may have questions. Not all the time, but you just have to figure out feel out the situation, because it's all about where that person is. Ministering should always be about what the other person needs, not what you think they need. Mm-hmm. The situation with Steve, the Mormon missionaries actually took the time to meet him, to tell him, like, this is what we think about the faith. Like, I remember seeing him sitting down and having really good conversations with these 2 missionaries. And then on the same day, he would have full-on heated debates with people who were his dorm mates. And they were like, this is why you are wrong, this is like what you should believe, like why don't you believe this? I don't understand why you don't. Like, everyone should be Catholic, like there shouldn't even be a debate. And like, it got so severe that my roommate at the time actually wouldn't have even allowed him into our room. Like, if I wanted to hang out with him, I actually had to go into his room, because I was actually really good friends with him. He was one of the first people I met. So the Mormons met him where he was at and had a conversation with him. And then the actions of Catholics caused him, when they were trying to minister to him, caused him to really fall back and like kind of put his defenses up, which is not how you should minister to a person. The third step is once one and two are done, where do you go from there? Like, do you press on from it and you try to have more talks with him or the people that you are ministering to, and if they are open to it, that is fine. That's actually fantastic. That means that there's a little door that's open. That doesn't mean you should come in guns blazing and being like, holy water. But that means that you take it one step at a time, hopefully to the actual conversion of the person. But if all they want is another conversation, hey, you were a pretty cool person, that's fine. And if they don't want to have another conversation, yeah, I'm good. Like, it was nice meeting you. You seem like a pretty good person. Not all Catholics are bad. Then you've done your part. Like, you have to have enough faith to believe that it is in God's hands now. And believe that that little seed of being not just a good Catholic, but a good person to another person was enough to be like, hey, I know some good Catholics. Like, not all Catholics are bad. And so they might even defend Catholicism because of their personal experience, which is a good experience as well. These are something that you should do every time you minister to a person. Like, these are questions that you should think of when you are talking to people. I would almost compare it to kind of being like talking about a fandom. You tell someone, yeah, I like this particular story or video game or movie or TV series, and if another person is just like, I like it too, what do you like about it? You kind of feel your way out. You don't go on and be like, I'm a fan of Harry Potter. I know the exact way that the first book started. I know every behind the scenes trivia of it. And while some people might think that's cool, other people might think, what's this weirdo talking about? And so you have to feel out whether or not it's a good way to talk to more people and open the conversation more. Because sometimes it is not. And we have to be okay with that.
Absolutely. So just to kind of sum that up, the 3 questions are, what are your intentions? Like, you as the minister, what are your intentions when you are ministering to someone? Is it just to convert them, or is it to help someone who's hurting? Mm-hmm. And then how do you actually do the ministry? Is it through action, like St. Francis saying, preach the gospel at all times, use words if necessary? Or is it like a dialogue, having a conversation? Or is it like explicit teaching? And then number 3, where do you go from there? Do you continue the dialogue, or do you end it there? And that takes discernment based on how the first 2 questions went. And that's something you should ask every time you minister and at every stage of ministry. Mm-hmm. This is important for the formation of young people, because if you feel that part of your identity is being a minister, this is how you can better form your identity. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's really great for the way society functions.
Yeah. And then it's also a good way to take the example with Steve. People wanted to minister to him, which wasn't necessarily a bad thing, but because of the way they ministered to him, he actually ended up falling away from the church. And it specifically, he and I are very good friends to this day, but when we were talking about when he was leaving, he was talking about how he couldn't handle the way people were treating him, and he felt like he didn't have enough of a support system here to stay at the university. Now he's actually an atheist. I will be honest, I don't think it was one of the most shining moments that Catholics that I know had.
For sure. Yeah, because I think a lot of people don't realize when they want to minister that they have the power to literally lead people away from the church if they do it wrong.
Yeah. And I still wonder if, like, had people been just nicer to him, would he be a Catholic now? But I don't try to think about it too much because I think it's in God's hands. Because who knows, maybe, and this is not why I'm still friends with him by any stretch of the imagination, but maybe because of how he and I, like, our friendship, maybe 20 years down the line, he might come back to the faith because we've been friends for so long. I hope we're still friends then. But I'm not sure, and I hope that he is. And like, I still treat him as a person and not as my friend who fell away from the church.
Absolutely, yeah. The important thing of when ministering is if you get to a point where you're not able to continue ministry, or where the ministry itself has failed, the ability to minister to a person just isn't there, okay, that it's in God's hands, and that's where the, like, faith part of our faith really comes in. We talked a bit about, like, intentionality in prayer as well.
Yeah, because I feel like to a certain degree, the same questions can apply of, like, well, what's your intention behind praying for these people? Is it just for the conversion of their soul? And while yes, that's great, if that's the only reason why you are praying for them, not because you want them, like, you're praying for their struggles, or you're praying for them to have a better life, to really know God. If you're praying, for lack of a better term, only so they can convert because of you, and so you can feel like you have some say in, like, their conversion, and, like, yeah, I converted them through the power of prayer, then you're praying for them wrong. Like, it's supposed to be looking less upon yourself and more on the actual person and their struggles.
Awesome. I think that's a really great point to end on. Absolutely. Ministry is about the other person. It's not about you, even if you're the minister. So then we do have the one question that we're asking every single person who's a guest.
Oh boy.
This is high stakes, high pressure. Not really.
I'm not ready.
But basically, if you had the opportunity to be at the Synod in October when it's happening, and you got to directly address the bishops as a representative of young people from around the world, talking about this aspect, the formation of personality through ministry, what is, like, a 30-second thing? Like, what would you say if you had, like, 30 seconds to talk to the bishops?
It would be that people need to be ministered to, but you shouldn't see them as just ministries. You should see them as people. So,
yeah, thank you so much for being here today. And
my pleasure.
In this week's video. So just keep coming back to the channel. We have Synod episodes coming out every Sunday between now and the Synod. It's quite the undertaking, but we're getting places. If you guys want to join in this conversation, like, comment down below how you've seen ministry done well, how you've
poorly
seen it fail. Yeah, absolutely. Do you ask yourself these kinds of questions? Do you have other questions you think people should be asking? Because I feel like
this is very broad.
Yeah, this is broad, and this is a beginning. We want all of these Synod videos to be the beginning of a conversation. Please just comment down below.
I will answer them.
Yeah, Marc's really good at answering the comments. But other than that, thank you so much for watching this video. Please remember to subscribe to our channel and ring that little bell so you get notified whenever we post videos. And we will see you next time. God bless. Bye.
Bye.